Blood pooled on the sun-baked shale, thick and terrifyingly dark. The valley echoed with the crack of a counter-sniper's rifle. Chief Beckett was down, clutching his throat. Below, the extraction team was trapped. With no one left on the scope, an ammo carrier made the only choice left. Hand me the rifle. The air at 9,000 feet was thin, burning the lungs with every drawn breath. For Petty Officer First Class Samantha Hayes, the oxygen deprivation was just another layer of misery added to the 90 pounds of gear crushing her spine. She lay perfectly still beneath a camouflage netting dusted with the local grey shale, her eyes scanning the jagged ridges of the valley below. Samantha was a fully qualified Navy SEAL, one of the few women to have survived the grueling crucible of badass and earned the Trident. But on this mountain, she was officially designated as the Mule. Her primary job was security, but her functional role was carrying the staggering amount of ammunition required for a sustained overwatch. Her pack was loaded with heavy boxes of 300 Winchester Magnum rounds, extra water, lithium batteries, and a specialized medical kit. 2 yards to her left lay Chief Petty Officer Thomas Beckett, a legend within the special warfare community. Beckett was a ghost in the flesh, a sniper with a confirmed record that commanded quiet reverence in the barracks. Beside him was Petty Officer Second Class David Carter, his spotter, hunched over a high-powered spotting scope. Their objective, Iron Viper, was supposed to be a standard smash and grab. A high-value informant was being extracted from a fortified village nestled in the valley floor. The assault team, call sign Spartan 2, had fast roped in before dawn. Now the sun was at its zenith, baking the rocks and creating shimmering waves of mirage heat that distorted the valley below. "Wind is picking up," Carter whispered, his voice a dry rasp over the internal comms. 3 knots. Full value from the east. "Adjusting," Beckett replied, his voice barely a murmur. His eye never left the glass of his MK-13 Mod 7 sniper rifle. Samantha watched the village through her own binoculars. She respected Beckett immensely, but the man was an iceberg. He hadn't said more than 10 words to her since they boarded the transport. He didn't care about the politics or the historical milestones of her being on his team. He only cared if she could carry the weight and keep her mouth shut. She had done both flawlessly. Suddenly, the radio hissed in their earpieces. "Overwatch, Spartan 2. We have the package. Moving to extraction point Delta. Be advised, the Hornet's nest is kicked. We have armed individuals emerging from the western structures." "Copy Spartan 2, Beckett said, his finger resting lightly on the trigger guard. "We have the high ground. Moving to engage." Through her binoculars, Samantha saw them. Dozens of fighters, previously hidden in subterranean tunnels, began swarming into the narrow dirt streets. They were armed with AK-47s and RPGs, moving with tactical coordination that suggested heavy training. "Target group, left of the mosque. Distance, 840 yards, Carter called out smoothly, reading the environmental data from his Kestrel meter. "Dial in 4.2 mils up. Send it when ready." Beckett exhaled. The MK-13 roared, the heavy barrel kicking back. A split second later, a fighter in the valley dropped violently. "Hit! Next target! 2 yards right! Same dope!" Beckett fired again. Another fighter fell. The assault team was bounding down the main street, using the chaotic suppression from the mountain to make their escape. It was textbook. It was perfect. Until the mountain bit back. Samantha saw it just a fraction of a second too late. a sharp, unnatural glint of sunlight off a coated glass lens on the opposite ridge, easily 1,000 yards away. It wasn't a random insurgent with an assault rifle. It was a hunter. Before Samantha could key her mic to shout a warning, a sickening, wet thwack cut through the dry mountain air. It was a sound completely distinct from the echo of Beckett's rifle. Beckett's body violently convulsed backward, his head snapping to the side. The heavy sniper rifle clattered against the rocks. "Chief!" Carter screamed, abandoning the spotting scope and lunging toward the older man. Samantha scrambled across the sharp shale, ignoring the cuts tearing through her uniform. She reached Beckett just as Carter did. The scene was a nightmare. The enemy sniper's round had struck Beckett just below the jawline, shattering his collarbone and severing a major artery. Bright, arterial blood was pulsing out in terrifying rhythmic spurts, soaking the dry earth in seconds. Beckett's eyes were wide, staring at the blinding blue sky, his mouth opening and closing as he tried to drag air into his lungs. He was drowning in his own blood. "Get the quick clot! Get the pressure dressing!" Carter yelled, his hands already plunging into the wound, desperately trying to pinch off the artery. His fingers were instantly slick, slipping against the shattered bone. Samantha ripped open her heavy medical pouch, her hands moving with frantic precision. She shoved the chemically treated gauze into the massive wound, but the bleeding was catastrophic. Down in the valley, the radio exploded with panicked chatter. "Overwatch, Spartan 2. We are taking heavy fire from the eastern ridge. We need suppression now. Where the hell is our cover?" Samantha looked at the radio, then at Carter, whose face was pale with sheer terror as he leaned his entire body weight onto Beckett's neck. If Carter moved his hands for a single second, Beckett would bleed out before the next heartbeat. "Carter, get on the gun!" Samantha shouted over the noise of the wind and the distant gunfire. "I can't!" Carter screamed back, tears of frustration cutting through the dust on his face. "If I let go, he dies. I can't leave him." Below, an RPG detonated violently against a mud brick wall, showering the trapped Spartan 2 team in debris. They were pinned down, outgunned, and running out of time. Samantha looked at the abandoned MK-13 rifle resting in the dirt. She was a SEAL. She was a lethal operator. But she was not a sniper. The mathematics of long-range ballistics, the wind calls, the spin drift. It was an art form that took years to master. She was just the ammo carrier on this hill. But there was no one else. "Overwatch. We have multiple fighters flanking our position. We need immediate suppression, or we are going to be overrun." The voice of the Spartan 2 team leader was raw, edging on desperation. Samantha's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She looked down at her hands, slick with Chief Beckett's blood. She wiped them furiously on her pants, took a deep breath, and grabbed the heavy barrel of the MK-13. "I've got the rifle," Samantha said, her voice dropping an octave, settling into a cold, hard register that surprised even her. She threw herself behind the weapon, pressing her shoulder deep into the stock. As her right eye settled behind the scope, the chaotic, sprawling battlefield of the valley instantly funneled into a crisp, magnified circle of crosshairs. "Carter!" Samantha barked, not taking her eye off the scope. "Keep pressure on him. Talk to me. I need a wind call." Carter was sobbing, his hands buried in Beckett's neck. "I can't. I don't have the kestrel." "It dropped." "Then guess," Samantha roared, racking the bolt back and chambering a massive 300 Win Mag round. The brass casing gleamed in the sun. "Give me the dope, Carter." Carter took a ragged breath, forcing his panic down. He was a trained spotter, even without his instruments. He looked at the dust kicking up in the valley, watching the heat mirages ripple across the rocky expanse. Distance, 880 yards to the flanking element, Carter stammered, his eyes darting to the valley below. Wind it's shifting. Look at the smoke from that RPG blast. It's moving right to left. Stronger now. Maybe 5 knots. Hold left. 1.2 mils. Elevation. Dial up 4.5. Samantha's hands flew over the turrets of the scope, the metallic clicks sounding loud in her ears. 4.5 up. She shifted her body, adjusting her natural point of aim. Through the glass, she found the flanking element, 5 insurgents, sprinting along a low stone wall, preparing to blindside the pinned SEAL team. She exhaled, emptying her lungs. The world went eerily silent. She let the crosshairs float just slightly to the left of the lead runner's chest to compensate for the wind. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle slammed into her shoulder with the force of a mule kick. The muzzle blast kicked up a cloud of shale dust around her. Through the scope, she watched the bullet trace, a tiny ripple in the air, arch over the valley. A second later, the lead runner collapsed mid-stride, his chest caving inward as the heavy round hit him dead center. "Hit!" Carter yelled, his voice cracking. "Good shot, Sam! Good shot!" Samantha didn't celebrate. She rapidly cycled the bolt, ejecting the smoking brass and driving a fresh round into the chamber. The remaining 4 insurgents had frozen, confused by the sudden death of their leader. That hesitation was fatal. "Sending," Samantha whispered. Crack. Another fighter went down, spinning wildly into the dirt. The remaining 3 panicked, abandoning their flank and diving for cover behind the stone wall. Samantha had stopped the immediate threat to Spartan 2. "Good hits, Overwatch. Flank is broken. We are moving." The radio crackled with renewed. Samantha kept her eye to the scope, scanning for the 3 who had hidden. "Carter, how's the chief?" "He's unconscious, but I still have a pulse. It's weak, Sam. We need a medevac now. We can't call a bird into this valley until we clear the anti-air threats, and we can't do that until Spartan 2 gets out," Samantha replied, her eye furiously scanning the opposite ridge. She hadn't forgotten the true threat. The insurgents in the valley were dangerous, but the man on the opposite mountain, the counter-sniper who had taken out Beckett, was the real apex predator. And now, he knew exactly where she was. Suddenly, a deafening crack ripped through the air, and a massive shard of rock exploded inches from Samantha's face. Sharp fragments of shale sliced into her cheek, drawing immediate blood. She flinched, pulling her face away from the scope, her ears ringing violently. "Sniper!" Carter screamed, flattening himself over Beckett's body. Samantha spat out a mouthful of dust and forced herself back onto the rifle. Her heart was beating so fast, it blurred her vision. The enemy sniper was using a heavy-caliber weapon, likely a Russian-made Dragunov or a captured Barrett. If he hit her, she was dead. If she died, Carter and Beckett would follow, and Spartan 2 would be massacred. "Carter, I need to find him," Samantha said, her voice shaking slightly. "Where did that shot come from?" "I don't know," Carter yelled. "I can't see the ridge from here." Samantha took a deep breath. She had to do this alone. She panned the heavy scope across the jagged, shadowed face of the opposite mountain. It was a sniper's paradise. Hundreds of caves, crevices, and overhangs. The enemy could be anywhere. "Think," she told herself. What did Beckett do? Look for the anomalies. Look for what doesn't belong. She adjusted the magnification, scanning the ridgeline methodically. Left to right. Top to bottom. Nothing. Crack. Another bullet screamed past her ear. So close she felt the displaced air ruffle her hair. It struck the radio pack strapped to her dropped rucksack, obliterating the comms relay in a shower of sparks and plastic. "We just lost long-range comms," Samantha yelled. She stared through the scope, forcing herself not to blink. The enemy sniper was firing down at a slight angle. The sun was moving. Then she saw it. Deep in the shadows of a rocky outcropping, perfectly concealed by a draped tarp that matched the mountain's color, there was a tiny, localized disturbance in the dust. The muzzle blast from the enemy's last shot had kicked up a faint, drifting cloud of debris that hadn't yet settled. "Got you," she whispered. She centered the crosshairs on the shadow. It was easily 1,200 yards away. A massive distance. The wind was whipping erratically across the chasm between the two mountains. This wasn't a shot you could calculate with a guess. It required perfection. Samantha closed her eyes for a split second, visualizing the math, feeling the wind against her bloody cheek. She adjusted her elevation turrets, dialing in the extreme drop required for the distance. She opened her eyes, placed the reticle, and rested her finger on the trigger. She was no longer just the ammo mule. She was the only thing standing between her team and total annihilation. 1,200 yards. That was 3,600 feet of unforgiving, swirling mountain air between the muzzle of Samantha's MK-13 and the dark crevice where the enemy hunter lay waiting. The wind was a living, breathing entity in this valley, channeling through the jagged shale corridors and creating invisible thermal updrafts that could push a massive .300 Winchester Magnum bullet feet off its intended path. Samantha's right eye was locked unblinking behind the ocular lens of the high-powered scope. Her heartbeat hammered in her ears, a loud, rhythmic drumming that threatened to throw off her micro-adjustments. She forced herself into the breathing exercises drilled into her during Bud-S. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out. Through the magnified glass, the shadowed outcropping remained frustratingly still. But Samantha knew he was there. The enemy sniper was a professional. He wouldn't expose himself after firing. He was waiting for her to make a mistake, waiting for her to shift her position or give away her exact coordinates with a muzzle flash. "Carter," Samantha whispered, her voice tight, barely audible over the howling wind. "How is he?" "Pulses threading," Carter choked out, his voice thick with panic and grief. "Sam, he's losing too much blood. The quick clot isn't holding the artery. It's too deep. Keep your weight on it. Do not let up." She couldn't look back. If she took her eye off the scope, she would lose the localized thermal signature she was tracking. The sun was dipping just slightly, casting longer shadows across the eastern ridge. And then she saw it, a millimeter of movement. The dull, matte black reflection of a suppressor inching out from the draped tarp. He was setting up for a follow-up shot. He was going to finish off the trapped seals below. Samantha didn't have time to second-guess her wind calls. She trusted the math Carter had hastily given her earlier, combined with her own frantic mental calculations. She aimed high and favored the left, placing her reticle squarely on the empty, shimmering air adjacent to the shadow. She reached the bottom of her exhale, the natural respiratory pause. Her body went completely still. Crack! At the exact millisecond, Samantha squeezed her trigger. A bright orange blossom of fire erupted from the enemy's crevice. They had fired simultaneously. For 1.7 seconds, Samantha's bullet tore through the thin atmosphere, crossing the great divide of the valley. In that same agonizing window, the enemy's armor-piercing round screamed toward her. The shale rock, less than 3 inches from Samantha's right elbow, exploded with the force of a hand grenade. The sheer kinetic impact of the Russian-made round sent a shower of razor-sharp stone shrapnel ripping through the sleeve of her combat shirt, tearing into her bicep. The concussive wave punched the air from her lungs, blinding her with a thick cloud of pulverized grey dust. Samantha gritted her teeth against the searing, white-hot pain in her arm, refusing to flinch, refusing to pull her head away from the rifle stock. The wind caught the dust, clearing her field of view just in time to see the impact of her own shot. Through the glass, the camouflage tarp on the distant ridge violently whipped backward. A heavy, lifeless form tumbled forward out of the shadows, a Dragunov sniper rifle clattering against the rocks as the shooter plummeted over the edge of the outcropping, disappearing into the steep ravine below. "Target down," Samantha gasped, her chest heaving as she fought through the pain in her arm. "Counter-sniper is neutralized." "Sam!" Carter screamed, his voice reaching a pitch of sheer terror. "He's coding. Chief is coding. I don't feel a pulse." Samantha abandoned the MK-13. She scrambled backward on her knees, the shale biting into her skin, and threw herself next to Beckett. His face was a horrifying shade of ash, his lips tinged blue. The blood around his neck had formed a thick, terrifying pool. "Move," Samantha ordered, shoving Carter's exhausted, blood-slicked hands aside. She plunged her own fingers directly into the wound, bypassing the saturated gauze, searching blindly for the slick, severed end of the carotid artery. It was a desperate, horrific maneuver, but they were miles from a trauma surgeon. Her fingers found it, a pulsating, retreating valve. She pinched it shut with all the grip strength she possessed. "Carter, get to the short-range comms. The long-range pack is dead, but Spartan 2 is still in the valley. We need a medevac now." Carter scrambled toward his own kit, pulling out a small intra-squad radio. His hands shook so violently, he dropped it twice before keying the mic. "Spartan 2, this is Overwatch. Do you read? We have a man down, critical. The counter-sniper is dead, but we need an immediate dust-off." Static hissed back. Then the gruff, breathless voice of Lieutenant Wyatt Gibson, the assault team leader, broke through. "Overwatch, this is Gibson. We read you. We are pushing toward Extraction Point Delta. The anti-air threat is still active. Enemy fighters are swarming the foothills. If we call a bird in now, it gets shot out of the sky." Samantha looked down at Beckett. His chest wasn't moving. "He doesn't have 10 minutes, Lieutenant." Samantha shouted toward Carter's radio. "We are losing him. Hold your position, Overwatch. We are adjusting our egress." Down in the valley, the remaining insurgent fighters had realized the devastating sniper fire pinning them down had suddenly stopped. The silence from the mountain was a blood in the water. The enemy commander on the ground recognized the vulnerability. They didn't need to chase the fleeing assault team. They could take out the isolated American snipers. Through the haze of heat and dust, Samantha saw a convoy of 3 beat-up Toyota Hilux trucks, heavily armed with mounted DSHK, heavy machine guns tearing away from the village. They weren't heading for Spartan 2. They were charging up the winding, treacherous switchbacks that led directly to Samantha and Carter's Overwatch position. "Carter," Samantha said, her voice dropping into a terrifyingly calm register as she kept her grip locked tight inside Beckett's neck. "Grab my M4. They're coming for us." The grinding roar of overworked engines echoed up the canyon walls. The 3 enemy technicals were chewing through the steep, rocky switchbacks with reckless speed. In less than 4 minutes, they would breach the crest of the ridge, bringing 3 heavy machine guns and a dozen armed fighters directly into the laps of the isolated sniper team. "Sam, I can't hold them off alone," Carter stammered, gripping Samantha's M4 carbine. His hands were still trembling, his face smeared with his chief's blood. "They have 50 cal mounts. We're sitting ducks up here." Samantha's mind raced. Her right hand was buried in Chief Beckett's neck, acting as a human tourniquet. Her left arm was bleeding sluggishly from the shrapnel wound. If she let go of Beckett's artery, he would bleed out in less than 60 seconds. If she didn't help Carter shoot, they would all be slaughtered in less than 5 minutes. It was a terrifying, impossible calculus. "Prop the MK-13 up on the bipod," Samantha ordered, her jaw clenched tight. "Point it down the trail." "What?" Carter asked, confused. "Do it, Carter! Put the rifle in front of me." Carter scrambled, dragging the heavy sniper rifle over the shale and setting the bipod legs into the dirt right beside Samantha. She twisted her body in agonizingly awkward contortions, keeping her right hand locked in Beckett's throat while dragging her left shoulder behind the buttstock of the MK-13. "Load it," she hissed. Carter racked the bolt, chambering a round. "Take the M4, cover our left flank. Do not let anyone come up that goat path," Samantha commanded. She pressed her left eye to the scope, her non-dominant eye, shooting with her non-dominant hand, while her right arm anchored a dying man to the earth. The crosshairs bounced violently with her every strained breath. The lead Toyota truck careened around the final bend, less than 400 yards down the slope. She could see the gunner in the back, swinging the massive barrel of the DSHK heavy machine gun upward, searching for their camouflage netting. Samantha exhaled, fighting the unbearable cramping in her right forearm. She couldn't manipulate the turrets. She couldn't dial for wind. She had to use the reticle hash marks and raw instinct. She pulled the trigger with her left index finger. The MK-13 roared. The massive .300 Win mag round shattered the windshield of the lead truck, catching the driver squarely in the chest. The vehicle instantly violently jerked sideways, its tires losing traction on the loose shale. It rolled, crashing violently into the canyon wall and creating a flaming, twisted barricade of metal that trapped the 2 trucks behind it. "Yes!" Carter screamed, firing short, controlled bursts from the M4 at the dismounted fighters, who were now scrambling up the rocks on foot. But the victory was momentary. The remaining insurgents poured out of the blocked vehicles, taking cover behind the burning wreckage. They began laying down a terrifying wall of suppressing fire. Bullets snapped over Samantha's head like angry hornets, shredding the camouflage netting and sparking against the rocks. "I'm out," Carter yelled, the bolt of the M4 locking back on an empty magazine. He fumbled frantically for his sidearm. The enemy fighters began bounding up the slope, their AK-47s chattering. They were 50 yards away. Then 40. They were going to overrun the hide. Samantha rested her forehead against the dirt, her grip on Beckett's artery aching with a burning, blinding fatigue. She reached down with her left hand, unclipping a fragmentation grenade from her vest. She wasn't going to let them take Beckett alive. Suddenly, the deafening staccato of a M249 squad automatic weapon erupted from the valley floor below the enemy convoy. The advancing insurgents froze, turning in shock. Ripping through the smoke and dust of the lower switchback came Lieutenant Wyatt Gibson and the men of Spartan 2. They hadn't run to the extraction zone. They had fought their way through the village, commandeered an abandoned enemy transport, and driven straight into the teeth of the ambush to save their snipers. Gibson and his operators moved with lethal, devastating precision. caught between the SEAL assault team below and Carter's desperate pistol fire above, the insurgent flanking element was wiped out in a matter of seconds. The threat was erased as violently as it had appeared. "Overwatch, Spartan 2, clear the ridge," Gibson's voice boomed over the radio. "We have secured the LZ. Inbound dust-off is 30 seconds out." The rhythmic, heavy thumping of UH-60, Black Hawk rotors, cut through the canyon wind. The massive medevac helicopter flared aggressively over the ridge, its side gunners scanning the valley, kicking up a hurricane of dust and shale. Pararescuemen leaped from the skids before the bird even touched down, sprinting toward Samantha and Carter. They threw themselves next to Beckett, seamlessly taking over for Samantha. When the medic clamped the artery and told her to let go, Samantha's hand was locked into such a severe cramp that a teammate had to pry her fingers open. They loaded Beckett onto a litter, moving with frantic speed. Carter grabbed Samantha by her good arm, hauling her to her feet and pulling her toward the waiting helicopter. As the Black Hawk banked hard away from the mountain, leaving the burning wreckage in the valley behind, Samantha slumped against the bulkhead. She looked down at her hands, permanently stained with the red dust of the mountain and the blood of her chief. 3 weeks later, in the sterile, quiet recovery wing of Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, Samantha stood by the door of a private room. Thomas Beckett was sitting up, his neck wrapped in thick bandages, his career as an active duty operator permanently ended by the shattered collarbone and nerve damage. He looked at Samantha, his eyes clear and sharp. He reached over to his bedside table with his good arm, picking up a small, weathered leather book, his sniper data log, the holiest relic of a long-range shooter. Beckett held it out to her. "You carried the weight," Beckett said, his voice a raspy, damaged whisper that still carried the weight of a command. "You're not a mule anymore, Hayes. You're the gun." Samantha took the book, the leather cool and heavy in her hands. The mountain had tried to break them, but it had only forged something sharper. What a breathtaking display of courage under absolute fire. Samantha Hayes proved that when the chips are down, true operators rise to the occasion, transforming from an ammo carrier into a legendary lifesaver. This real-life tale of grit and brotherhood shows the unbreakable bond of the SEAL teams. If this story had your heart pounding, please smash that like button, share this video to honor these heroes, and subscribe to our channel for more intense, true tactical stories.